The tourism minister says the sector is ready to welcome an increase in both domestic and international visitors. It's after President Cyril Ramaphosa recently announced an easing of lockdown restrictions. I'm joined by the tourism minister, Mmamoloko Kubayi-Ngubane, on the line now. Minister, good evening, and thanks for your time. Let's talk about this reopening of the borders. There's, of course, been great concern around exactly which countries that form part of that red list are going to be allowed to fly into South Africa. Has there been consensus yet on who should be on the list of those who can come to the country and who shouldn't?
Good evening and good evening to your viewers. In terms of the international countries or countries that will be allowed outside the continent, we haven't seen the list as yet. The department in this is the Department of Health, because this is a matter that relates to health, and they will have to use the protocols that relate to what WHO talks about when it talks about high-risk countries. So as soon as the list is allowed to be finalized, we'll be able to know as well how far which countries will be included. What comforts us from tourism is that even if the list excludes certain countries immediately, is that bi-weekly, NCCC and Cabinet, as President has announced, will be able to look at the list and update it as in when time goes. It's the issue that we've got to be able to give South Africans comfort that when we open the borders, we are not doing that in a reckless manner, and therefore the balancing act between lives and livelihood remains a critical point. So we will be able to input in terms of that process, and also looking forward to constantly the renewal of the list.
When we take a look at the markets such as the US market, the UK market, and even the Asian market, those tend to be some of the largest contributors to our general tourism sector. And in fact, it's where we have the greatest influx of tourists coming from. Will it affect how the industry is able to rebound if some of those areas and countries countries are not able to actually come into the country?
In terms of the highest number, actually, it's the continent. Africa contributes to 71%. The difference is that other global countries contribute in terms of GDP. So they are high spenders. Though they might not contribute, they are less than what we get in terms of numbers from the continent. Those countries give us, in terms of value, contribution to GDP, because the dollars are higher than rand, euros are higher than rand. Yes, they contribute. What is also what we are noticing and we are observing is that we might open the borders, but those countries might apply restrictions. So it's not a one-way situation. That's why it's important for all of us to continue to assess what is happening in the global market. You would have noted that in the UK, the Prime Minister would have hinted possibility of another lockdown recently, as in a couple of days ago. Now, those things, when they happen, we do worry. So it's not only about South Africa saying those sort of markets are a risk to us, but those countries themselves would eventually close the borders. And what I've been saying to our sector is that we've got to be really agile. COVID has taught us not to be rigid in how we do things. So repositioning the brands for domestic markets, repositioning the brands and their products for the continent remains critical, because we've not really tapped into the continent in the manner that we should be tapping, especially in countries where it is possible for them to come and increase the spending. If you look at countries such as Nigeria, majority of Nigerians go and shop in London and in Dubai. If we can be able to redirect that traffic to South Africa, especially of the high spenders of that country, we will be able to see the contribution that we are looking for.
Of course, it's great news to be able to adapt the strategy of the sector towards the current problems. On the other hand, however, some of the countries that you're talking about, people in those countries would have a particular view of South Africa. And the number of reports that have been emanating about South Africans being xenophobic, or the kind of treatment that non-nationals in this country are subjected to, do you think that at all affects the way that the rest of the continent responds to the country? And what kind of bearing do you think that has on whether people choose to come to South Africa or not?
It does affect. That's why last year I took a trip to West Africa to deal after the xenophobic problem or the attacks on certain foreign nationals. And when we went there, we had to explain because we found that a lot of misinformation happened. So it's a two-way system. Having to be able to indicate to those markets, to deal with them, to assure them of their safety when they come to the country. But secondly, in appealing to South Africans, not to treat Africans in a different manner. Because if, and again, one believes that it's even sometimes out of lack of knowledge. Because when we don't understand that travelers, when they come into the country, they contribute to my neighbor's jobs. My neighbor being able to put food on their table for their children. My neighbor or my family member, my relative, being able to continue to have an income. Then we can be able to change that attitude. It's more around conversations with South Africans, more around making sure that South Africans understand the importance of tourism. I think we've really covered a milestone in terms of educating South Africans about tourism. Many people start giving me feedback to say, we didn't understand the impact, direct and indirect impact when these travelers don't come. So having gone through lockdown, having not had travelers into the country, it has opened a lot of South Africans' eyes to understand the impact when tourism does not flourish.
Tourism Minister.
And I'm hoping that out of that, South Africans will change their attitude, will not see what has happened previously happening again.
Sure. Tourism Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi-Ngubane, thank you for your time on News at Prime.